Hey everyone, welcome back. Well, it's Saturday, and I didn't have to get up and do the market this morning because the regular markets have ended, and there's just a couple of Christmas markets coming up in November. But tomorrow we'll be at the 34th annual craft show in Blandford here. So this is my latest creation, just finished up this morning. And here's some video on how we made it. I hope you enjoy.
So once the clay is on the slab roller, I come back with a rib and I smooth it out using some water, and that makes sure that I take the canvas texture that would have been left on there from the slab roller, and lets me get everything ready to cut out and use the template. One thing we found was that we had used paper templates before, but once we were starting to do production of certain things, it was better for us to go ahead and make a template out of plywood. And that way we could use it over and over, and then also have a consistent size and consistent look, even though each one is handmade and can look a little different from, how you do the eye or how you, um, push things around the clay. So, but now we're using this template. It makes it a lot easier. Coming in with a cutting, with a needle tool, and just getting it, the basic cutout done, because I'll be doing the shaping by hand.
Mhm.
Make sure you save a piece of the clay if you're going to be doing this, because you'll be using some of this clay to make the back. So you just set it aside and then continue to get the template piece off, and you'll begin to work and smooth it out um, while it's still wet. So I began to use my fingers, which are dipped in water. For me, my best tool is my fingers. Some people like a sponge, some people like a chamois. The main thing is that your fingers need to be a bit wet to move the clay, and or damp, and that's how you begin to shape. Another thing to remember is that clay has memory. So at this beginning stages, I know that I'm going to have the tail have some movement to it. So even at this beginning stage, while I'm cleaning it up, I go ahead and get the tail across and where I'm wanting it, even though I'm going to be turning this around and flattening again. Because of the way clay uh, acts and has memory, it makes it easier when I come back to be able to sort of bend it back into that shape. Anyway, lots of different tools around that you can use. I tend to use a lot of copper piping, same thing that James uses when making the bonsai pots, but that's to make the exterior of the eye, and then just coming back later with a smaller tool and then working on the mouth. Again, you'll find tools that you tend to like to use. Some of them household pottery tools. I use the needle tool a lot, and have found that this works well when doing the mouth, just using the needle tool. I guess also try to keep in mind that nature is very symmetrical, and and when I start doing things now, I'm a little bit more observant into trying to keep things a bit symmetrical if I can. Coming back with just a drinking straw to make the inner eyeball, and just smoothing it out, working it. I've now turned it back over onto its back side. Make sure you clean up underneath it I use a little water to clean up so that when you do turn it over, nothing sticks to the other side. And then I begin to clean up the back. And I'm going to get ready to put the back on that holds the metal to get it onto the rock. And that's where you're going to use that piece that you saved when you had the ruler. It rolled out before. And same thing, I'm going to come back, just give it a good cleanup, use the rib to get off any of the texture. And then I'm going to end up using a piece of, I think it's metal pipe, or a piece that you can use a wooden straw or a dowel, whatever works for you, to wrap around and to make that back piece. So cut about a 2-inch long piece, but it will end up being 2 inches long. It's about 1.5 inches wide, and use this tool just as a guide to wrap around. And I'm going to end up on the top pinching it to make it, closed at the top. And same thing going back to the whale and measuring to make sure that it's not sticking out at the end or sticking up too high where you would see it. It's just there to hold the metal to get it into the rock. So start looking at size and cutting, and then I'll begin to attach it to the back. It's important that you make the back and do the whale or whatever you're working on at the same time so the clay is in the same state with each other. That's when you're trying to score and slip something together. In general, you don't want to be coming back and adding this, rolling it out later. It works best, I found, when it's been rolled out the same time. And then I'll actually use that back piece as a guide to know where to score. I stick it sort of lightly onto the back, and I just score very lightly with the tool just as a guide to know I'm not pushing the tool into the clay much at all. I'm basically just tracing a teeny bit very lightly so I know where to score. And then I have this, teeny little tool here that makes it super easy. Just score it. And you go back and you do it also on the piece you're adhering it to so that they can connect. And the same thing again, I'm going to score it. And then slip is basically taking clay that is dried and you grind it up. We used to grind it up by hand, add some water, and make sort of a slurry with it. And that's, glue. That's how you glue things together in clay, is using a score and slip method. So I begin to push it down using a sponge, using water to get it to adhere. And then I found, to keep from having any cracks appear, I found that it is a good idea to come back and just sort of smash it down with another tool there. And it helps bring it all together. And then I'll come back with a chamois and just, rub that out so it looks nice. Make that disappear. And as you can see, it's a little bit over the edge there, so I'm going to come back and make sure that that is flush so you don't see it and it doesn't take away, that you don't want to see that back at all, whether it's on the top of the whale or in the bottom. And so you make sure it's cut and flush. And then clean it up. And now, because I had turned it over before the other way and had already put the tail in a good position, because of the clay and the way it has memory, it'll kind of go back. Same thing, I want to make sure that that backing hole is the right size and that I didn't accidentally smash it down at all, and I come back again with the straw that I know is about the size. of the piece of metal that's going to go in the back once it's ready to go. And take it up, just clean it back up again. And then I'm going to put it back like I'd had it before, looking at the angle I want. And this is where you get to actually sort of give the clay some movement and let it dry leather hard, and step away from it, leave it alone once you've got it set. You'll still have a chance to come back and do more cleaning up with it once it's more leather hard. And that's where I can make the edges more defined and just clean it up better. But for now, it's just making sure it's smooth and that I have the movement I want. So I'm feeling good about the way that looks. So now I really just need to step away and wait for it to dry.
Okay, so here's our well that we've made. It's been drying for only a few days now. And at this point, they're very fragile. Got to be really careful with them. So that one needs to sit for about a week. And after a week, they go in for a bisque fire. So these two have been through that. It basically turns them to stone and makes them stable. And after that, they get dunked in this blue glaze, this is the best glaze that's working for us. It's a royal blue or a cobalt blue. And then fired again. So this one's ready to go on a rock. And I got lucky the other day when I was out rock hounding. This one definitely has like a prehistoric fern fossiled into it. The rock hounding is really good around here. Sometimes you get lucky. So what I'm looking for is a really nice flat bottom on them. So this one has that flat bottom that will sit on a table well. So there's a lot of searching for these rocks. They're not that easy to find, but it's a lot of fun. So the next step is to see where the whale wants to live on this rock. And I'm thinking about right there. So I'll get a pencil mark back here because we're going to use a steel pin to connect the whale to the stone. So the steel pin will go in that hole, and we're going to make a hole right there in the rock. So that'll be the next step. So we're here at the drill press. So I've got a diamond bit mounted in the drill press. And the key to using these is they need to be wet all the time or they heat up too much in the stone. So a squirt bottle is a good thing to have. So I want to keep that bit wet the whole time it's drilling. So there we go. So now this will need to get nice and dry before we glue it all together. All right, so the next step is to get our steel cut to the right length. So this is a piece of 1/4 inch steel, and it's going to go all the way in the whale. And I can see on my rock here that I've ended up with about a 1/2 inch hole. So I'll get this piece marked here at about a 1/2 inch. So that's where we need to cut it off. So we'll put it in a vise so it's nice and safe. And we'll use the angle grinder to cut our piece off. All right, so we're using a 2-part epoxy here. So we'll mix them up for this part. I don't need much because I'm just going to glue it to the whale right now. So the best way I've found to do this is to have a tub of sand. It's a great place to stick the whale so I can get it just like I want it. And since this is going in there, we can use this to mix up our glue. I want to try to fill this whole cavity with the epoxy, so it's all around the steel. So we'll just let that, there we go, let it set up now for a few minutes, and we'll be ready to glue him on a rock. Okay, here's your tip for the day. Never try to glue anything up with a cat around. It's just not going to work, is it, Squinty? All right, so we've got the steel pin glued into the whale, and I've been just dry fitting it here, and it looks like it's going to work out really well. So it's glue time. About the same amount of epoxy again. Now that the cat has been safely removed from the premises, no cat was harmed in this video. I'll get good contact on the bottom of the whale here with the rock, so I'm going to put glue all across there. Make sure the hole's all filled up with it. So I'm going to use this rock here to position it while it dries. And that's looking pretty good. So we'll just let that glue set up now. It is 5-minute epoxy, so it only takes 10 or 15 minutes for it to get stable.